Hello, Muslim friends in the world. On the morning that should have been peaceful, on March 28, 2025, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck the entire region of Myanmar. The earth trembled with an intensity never before experienced. Major cities collapsed in an instant, and remote areas that were previously untouched were cut off from the outside world. The earth-shattering explosion seemed to send echoes of destruction to every corner of the country. Houses crumbled, bridges fell, and over 10,000 lives were lost in this terrifying disaster. In the midst of the chaos, in a small city named Mandalay, a large Buddhist temple that had stood for centuries bore witness to the extraordinary devastation. This temple was a sanctuary for monks who had dedicated their lives to seeking inner peace. It was here that Ashin Jivit, a 29-year-old monk, lived his life in silence and meditation, far from the outside world. At the time the earthquake struck, Ashin Jivit was sitting in a meditative position, feeling peace within his soul. However, his tranquility lasted only a few seconds. The ground beneath his feet began to shake. The walls of the temple cracked and collapsed instantly. Unable to avoid it, Jivit fell and was buried beneath most of the rubble. When he opened his eyes, everything seemed blurry. The entire world felt as though it was swaying, and he could feel the tremors of the earthquake throughout his body. With difficulty, Jivit rose from the debris that had fallen on him. From a distance, he heard screams and cries, signs that chaos was unfolding. He tried to stand, but his legs were shaky. In panic, he realized that the temple, which he had trusted as a sanctuary, was now a lifeless ruin. All the monks who had become his family were now trapped in the horrific destruction. With a troubled heart, Jivit ran out of the rubble. Outside the temple, the scene was utter chaos. Streets were destroyed, and panicked people were running in search of shelter. Yet amid the turmoil, there was a sight he would never forget. Some unfamiliar people, dressed in different clothes, came with aid. They were not from Myanmar, and most surprising of all, they were a group of volunteers from Muslim countries. The young monk stopped for a moment, feeling the strong wind blowing and the dust swirling in the air. As he gazed at these volunteers, his heart was filled with questions. What could have brought them this far just to help people they didn't know? Among the volunteers, there was an older, calmer man wearing simple clothing and a striking white turban. The man was distributing food and water to the injured citizens, with a smile full of compassion. Ashin Jivit approached the man, curious. "Are you from?" Jivit asked, not finishing his sentence. "Yes, I am Ustaz Hassan from Indonesia," the man replied softly. "We came to help as best we can. All living beings are brothers. We must help each other in times like this." A strange feeling arose in Jivit's heart. There was something different in Ustaz Hassan's words. He didn't just see others as victims of the disaster, but as brothers. In moments like this, when life and death are so close together, teachings like that felt so profound. Ustaz Hassan noticed Jivit's confusion, his eyes full of concern. "I know this is a very difficult time. However, we can face it together. If there is anything you need help with or want to discuss, we are here." Jivit was touched. Though he didn't know who this man was or where he came from, he felt warmth in his words. It wasn't just physical aid being offered, but a deeper message. A message of love, sacrifice, and hope amid the darkness. At that moment, Jivit felt torn between two conflicting emotions. On one hand, he felt driven by a deep sense of humanity, wanting to help as many people as he could. On the other hand, there was a sense of doubt, a feeling of loss that enveloped his heart. The temple, which had always been his sanctuary, was now destroyed, and he felt lost. That dark night, as Jivit sat alone among the ruins of the temple, he wondered, if the Buddhist teachings I have trusted couldn't protect the place I called home, what can truly bring true peace? Under the dark sky, with the fire burning from the refugee tents, Jivit felt a greater call, a deeper question. What was he truly searching for? What was the meaning of life? This chapter ends with Jivit deciding to begin his search, attempting to find the answers to the questions that bound his heart. The next day, the atmosphere in Mandalay was still filled with chaos. Destroyed roads, collapsed buildings, and hundreds of injured people made every corner of the city look like hell on earth. Yet amidst this turmoil, a light of hope began to shine on the crippled city. Volunteers from various countries, including Muslim groups, continued their efforts to send aid. They not only provided food and water, but also offered comfort to the injured and those who had lost their families. Ashin Jivit couldn't sleep that night. His heart was filled with emptiness and the questions that kept disturbing his mind. Early in the morning, he left the temple ruins and headed to the aid distribution center. There he saw Ustaz Hassan again, speaking with several local citizens. The situation around them was busy, but Ustaz Hassan appeared calm, as if unaffected by the chaos surrounding him. "Ustaz Hassan," Jivit called, his voice uncertain. Ustaz Hassan turned with a familiar, reassuring smile that calmed anyone who saw it. "Ashin Jivit, good morning. How are you?" he responded gently. "Thank you for your help yesterday," Jivit said, slightly awkward. I feel confused. All of this happened so quickly. The world feels like it shattered in an instant." Ustaz Hassan nodded, his eyes showing deep understanding. "Sometimes the world must fall apart first, so we can see something greater. Sometimes destruction brings us closer to Allah and to true peace." Jivit stared at Ustaz Hassan with a look full of questions. "How can you be so calm? After everything that happened, isn't this a great disaster? How can you still have such peace?" Ustaz Hassan smiled and then sat beside him, inviting Jivit to sit under a shaded tree. "When something big happens, we feel small, don't we? When the world shakes beneath us, we feel powerless. But in Islam, we are taught that whatever happens in this world is the will of Allah, and we must accept it sincerely. Pain and suffering, joy and happiness, everything comes from Him, and everything is a test. We believe that through patience and prayer, we can find tranquility in the midst of disaster." Jivit listened attentively. There was something very profound in Ustaz Hassan's words. As a monk, Jivit had been accustomed to deep meditation and the search for inner peace. However, there was something in the way Ustaz Hassan spoke that made him feel as though he had found peace in a higher place, a place grander than he could imagine. "Do you believe we can find peace after such a great disaster?" Jivit asked, his voice full of doubt. "Yes, I believe," answered Ustaz Hassan with unwavering conviction. "But peace is not just about the external world. True peace begins from within us. In Islam, we believe that Allah is always with His patient and sincere servants. When we accept His will with a clean heart, peace will come to us, even if the world around us is shaking." Jivit fell silent. Ustaz Hassan's words echoed in his heart. For years, he had sought peace through deep meditation and the strict discipline of life as a monk. Yet he felt something was missing. There was an emptiness that hadn't been filled, even though he had lived a life full of spiritual practice. In the presence of this man, Jivit began to feel something different, a calm that came not only from within, but also from a deep belief in the Creator. "Ustaz," Jivit said, his heart full of confusion, "I have spent my whole life searching for peace in the teachings of Buddhism, but I feel like something is missing. Can the teachings of Islam give me the answer I'm looking for?" Ustaz Hassan looked at him gently. "The teachings of Islam are not meant to replace what you believe, but to expand your understanding. In Islam, we are taught to believe in the one God, to respect life, and to do good to others. We are all, regardless of our religion, brothers and sisters. And in the face of disasters like this, we must help each other and show compassion." Jivit felt his heart opening further. These words felt like finding a key that opened a door inside him. All this time, he had searched for peace and understanding in a world that seemed divided between spirituality and humanity. But now he began to see how Islam brings them together in such a simple yet powerful way. However, as Jivit tried to open himself to understand more, a sense of fear began to settle in him. He knew that the path he was considering could separate him from everything he had believed in and from the people he had loved for so many years. How could he leave the life he had lived for so long? But on the other hand, he felt his heart and mind opening more to embrace these teachings. "I want to learn more, Ustaz," Jivit said finally, with a voice full of resolve. "But I am afraid. I'm afraid of losing everything." Ustaz Hassan looked at him with affection. "There is nothing to fear, Ashin Jivit. The search for truth is an inevitable journey for every soul. If your heart feels drawn, let yourself follow that path, for in the end, truth and peace will lead you." At that moment, Jivit felt as though something shifted inside him. It was as if the world was opening up to him in a way he had never experienced before. He knew that a challenging spiritual journey awaited him, but he also knew that this was a journey he had to take, even with all its uncertainty. This chapter ends with Jivit taking the first step toward a deeper understanding of Islam, feeling a new light beginning to shine on his life's path. Days passed after the earthquake, but for Ashen Jivit, each day felt like a new step in a spiritual journey he had never imagined. Every time he met Ustaz Hassan or other Muslim volunteers, his heart opened more to learning about Islam. Though still uncertain and torn, there was something in the calmness and sincerity of the volunteers that made him want to understand more deeply. One afternoon, as Jivit walked past the ruins of the city that were beginning to be cleaned up, he met a local Muslim man named Abdul Rahman. Abdul Rahman was a farmer who had lived in Mandalay for many years and had become a volunteer helping earthquake victims. Although his face was tired, his smile was wide and genuine, as if there were no complaints in his heart. "Assalamu alaikum, Ashin Jivit," said Abdul Rahman warmly. Jivit was surprised, as he had never met this man before. "Walaikum salam," he replied cautiously. Abdul Rahman smiled. "I heard from Ustaz Hassan that you are interested in learning more about Islam. I would like to offer my help if you're willing." Jivit paused for a moment. He felt nervous, but on the other hand, there was a strong desire in him to understand more. He had heard many things from Ustaz Hassan, but now he felt the need to delve deeper, to answer his own confusion. "Can I ask you something, Abdul Rahman? What makes you so calm and full of love, even though your life is also full of challenges?" Jivit asked sincerely. Abdul Rahman looked at him with deep eyes. "That's what I've been searching for my whole life, Ashin. I was born into a Muslim family, but the peace I feel now isn't just because of my religion. Islam teaches us to accept fate and do the best we can. What we have, what we face, it's all part of life's trials. And when we surrender everything to Allah, we experience true peace." "But how do we cope when we don't know what we're facing?" asked Jivit, his eyes full of confusion. "I feel like I've lost direction after the earthquake. The place where I sought peace is destroyed, and I don't know what to believe anymore." Abdul Rahman nodded, understanding Jivit's inner struggle. "I understand that feeling, but we can't control our lives entirely. Islam teaches us to accept reality with patience and keep praying. Allah is the all-knowing, and we can only try to be the best in every circumstance." Jivit felt that there was something profound he wanted to learn more about. In Buddhist teachings, he had learned to seek inner peace through meditation and self-understanding. But the concepts of Tawakal and surrendering to God that Abdul Rahman explained felt like a new and deeply enriching idea. There was a peace in Abdul Rahman's words that touched his heart. A few days later, Jivit visited Ustaz Hassan again. He wanted to learn more. He wanted to know how Islam teaches someone to find peace, especially in the face of such a great disaster. "Ustaz, I feel like there's something missing in my life, something I couldn't find in my previous teachings," said Jivit with a voice full of confusion. "I want to know more about Islam. What does Islam say about the purpose of our life in this world?" Ustaz Hassan looked at him with a wise smile. "The purpose of life according to Islam is very simple, Ashin. This life is a test. Every test comes in various forms, whether in happiness or sadness, in life or death. Allah tests every being to see who among them does the best deeds, and we are given the freedom to choose our path. But peace comes when we accept His will with sincere hearts." Jivit felt a revelation. So in Islam, peace doesn't just come from within, but also from accepting what God gives us. "Yes," Ustaz Hassan replied. "Islam teaches us to believe that every event, good or bad, is part of a greater destiny that we don't always understand. But with strong faith, we can accept everything with an open heart and maintain inner peace." After that long conversation, Jivit began to feel there was something deeply meaningful in the teachings of Islam that he had never encountered before. He began reading the Quran with guidance from Ustaz Hassan and Abdul Rahman. Every word he read seemed to bring a deeper peace than he had ever felt in meditation. Yet despite his heart being open to these teachings, a small voice inside him kept asking, "Am I ready to leave my life as a monk? Am I ready to change everything I've believed in for so long?" A few nights later, Jivit sat alone among the ruins of the temple. He reflected on what he had learned in the past few weeks. The world around him seemed quiet, but inside him, a strong inner struggle continued to churn. On one side, he felt closer to peace, but on the other, he felt afraid to take another step. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approached him. Ana. Jivit turned, and before him stood Ustaz Hassan, with a smile full of understanding. Ashin Jivit, Ustaz Hassan said gently, this path may not be easy, but if your heart finds peace in this teaching, then now is the right time to take that step. Jivit looked at Ustaz Hassan, and for the first time in his life, he felt that the decision to change his life wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace with an open heart. He knew that this journey had only just begun. This chapter ends with Jivit fully opening his heart to embrace the teachings of Islam, while his heart still wrestles with the big decision he must make. The following weeks felt like a journey full of inner tension for Ashin Jivit. Although his heart was increasingly open to the teachings of Islam, his fear of change still haunted him. Every time he read the Quran, every time he spoke with Ustaz Hassan or Abdul Rahman, he felt like he was getting closer to something greater than himself. However, there was one question that kept troubling him. Am I ready to leave behind my identity as a monk? One night, after days of reflection and questioning himself, Jivit decided to go to a quiet place, far from the hustle and chaos that still haunted Mandalay after the earthquake. He walked to the peaceful riverside, a place he often visited to reflect and meditate. There he sat under a large, shady tree, eyes closed, trying to find the answer within himself. However, his mind could not focus. Images of his life as a monk, the traditions he had followed for years, and the reality that he was now drawn to Islam all swirled in his mind. He felt as though he was at a huge crossroads, two very different worlds pulling him in opposite directions. What should I do? Jivit whispered to himself, his eyes slowly opening. Not long after, a soft voice called his name. Jivit turned and saw Ustaz Hassan walking toward him, looking calm and peaceful, as though unaffected by all the chaos around them. Do you feel better, Ashin? Ustaz Hassan asked as he sat beside him. Jivit simply nodded, though his heart was still filled with confusion. I feel like there are two opposing worlds within me, Ustaz. I don't know which one to choose. What I've believed all this time, or this new path I've found? Ustaz Hassan listened attentively. I know this is not an easy decision, Ashin. Leaving behind what has been a part of us for many years is indeed challenging. But we all walk different life paths. Sometimes we feel confused because we haven't truly found peace within ourselves. Sometimes we have to face our greatest fears to truly know what we are searching for. Jivit lowered his head, reflecting for a moment. But I'm afraid, Ustaz. I'm afraid that if I change, I'll lose my identity. I'll lose everything I've fought for as a monk. Change is indeed scary, Ashin, Ustaz Hassan replied softly. But sometimes we must let go of what we once believed to embrace what is better for us. Allah gives us the freedom to choose our path in life, but He also gives us guidance to find the right way. Jivit felt a deep emotion. Ustaz Hassan's words opened his mind. What he had feared all this time, losing his identity, was actually part of his spiritual journey. Isn't every search for truth full of challenges and change? Isn't the courage to face fear part of the true test of life? That night, after speaking with Ustaz Hassan, Jivit felt his heart lighten a little. There was a sense of peace starting to flow within him. He knew that he wasn't fully ready yet, but he also knew that he couldn't continue living in doubt. He had to take this step. The next day, Jivit met Abdul Rahman, who had long been his companion on this journey. They sat by the same riverside, and Jivit began to share his inner feelings. Abdul Rahman, I feel like I'm on the verge of a big change in my life, Jivit said, his voice trembling slightly. I know that I want to learn more about Islam, but I'm afraid of changing everything in my life. I'm afraid of losing the path I had chosen before. Abdul Rahman looked at him with understanding. Change is difficult, Jivit, but as Ustaz Hassan said, there's nothing greater than a belief that comes from a sincere heart. Islam teaches us to improve ourselves every day, to become better at facing life and the trials that come. Sometimes the road to peace is not always smooth, but we must be brave enough to take the first step. Jivit gazed at the darkening sky, reflecting for a moment. The fear he had felt began to subside, replaced by a stronger feeling, the feeling that now was the time to make a big decision. He knew that living as a monk had given him many lessons, but the teachings of Islam offered something deeper, a peace that not only came from within, but also from surrendering to God. "Thank you, Abdul Rahman," Jivit finally said, his voice full of conviction. "I'm ready to walk this new path. I want to seek peace in the teachings of Islam, and I believe this is the way." That night, Jivit returned home while the volunteers continued to work hard to help the earthquake victims. In Jivit's heart, a new feeling began to grow, a stronger determination to seek true peace. He knew this journey would be full of challenges, but he was ready to face them. At that moment in the quiet of the night, Jivit finally decided to recite the 2 declarations of faith, to profess his belief in Allah. With a firm and sincere voice, he said, "Ashhadu alla ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah." With that, Jivit officially embarked on a new path in his life, a path filled with peace, love, and surrender to the one God. This chapter ends with Jivit reciting the Shahada, beginning a new journey as a Muslim, with an open heart and full conviction. Jivit's decision to embrace Islam was not an easy one, but every step he took now felt more certain. After reciting the Shahada in the quiet of the night, he experienced a peace he had never felt before. Though his heart was full of questions, a new conviction was growing within him. Jivit knew that this journey was just beginning, and many challenges and tests awaited him. However, he felt ready to face them with confidence and courage. The morning after he recited the Shahada, Jivit returned to the place he usually visited for meditation. But this time, his meditation was no longer solely about seeking peace within himself, but also about understanding the will of God. The surroundings, which had once felt silent and empty, now seemed more alive and filled with a new peace. He watched the river flowing calmly, the wind blowing gently, in the clear sky. It was as if everything symbolized the beginning of a new journey. Over time, Jivit began to study the teachings of Islam more deeply. He joined the local Muslim community, often discussing with Ustaz Hassan and Abdul Rahman, learning about prayer, worship, and fasting. Though there was an initial awkwardness, transitioning from the Buddhist meditation practices he had followed for years, Jivit felt himself growing closer to God. However, this change did not come without challenges. Many of his fellow monks and members of the Buddhist community were shocked and confused when they heard about Jivit's decision to convert to Islam. Some even became concerned and tried to persuade him not to abandon the path he had followed for so long. One afternoon, Jivit was summoned by one of the senior monks he deeply respected, Ashananda, for a conversation. Ashananda was a wise monk who had been teaching Jivit since he was young. They sat in the quiet meditation room, only the sound of the wind whispering outside. "Jivit," said Ashananda, his voice heavy with concern, "we have heard that you have decided to leave the Buddhist path and embrace Islam. Is this the right decision?" Jivit looked at him gently. "I don't know, Ashananda. I have walked the long path as a monk, but there is something I feel within me that I did not find in the teachings of Buddhism. Islam gives me true peace, and I feel closer to God since embracing it." Ashananda fell silent for a moment. "Of course we all seek peace, Ashan, but do you truly understand the teachings of Islam? Are you sure this is not just a change influenced by external factors?" Jivit took a deep breath, savoring every word the senior monk had spoken. "I didn't decide this just because of outside influence. I feel it in my heart. The teachings of Islam give me a peace and happiness that are deeper than anything I've experienced as a monk. This is not a decision I made lightly, but it is a step that feels right to me." Ashananda looked at him with eyes full of understanding. "I cannot change your decision, Jivit. Everyone has their own path in the search for truth, but I hope you will not forget everything you have learned as a monk. Love, peace, and sacrifice are teachings that we also hold dear in our lives." Jivit felt a deep touch in his heart. "I will not forget those teachings, Ashananda. Everything I have learned in my life, both in Buddhism and Islam, has shaped who I am now." After their deep conversation, Jivit felt even more certain of his choice. He knew that this decision would not make him popular with everyone, but he believed that everyone had the right to choose their own path, according to the inner journey they were on. In the days that followed, Jeevit continued his new life with sincerity. He became more active in helping earthquake victims, joining Muslim volunteers to set up aid centers and shelters. Though his body was tired, his heart felt lighter and filled with joy. He felt as though he had rediscovered his life's purpose, to serve humanity with love and devotion, regardless of religious background.